To the January meeting, January 2021 meeting of the Journal Square Community Association. We're streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you all for joining us this Saturday morning. We're really excited to have you. For those who don't know, my name is Kevin Bing. I'm the president of the Journal Square Community Association. If you've seen the flyer, we have three speakers today. Jake Hudnut, who's the Municipal Prosecutor and the head of the Quality of Life Task Force. Deb Italiano will be joining us. She's from Sustainable JC, and she'll be joined by Tom Zinkraff. And then we also have Steve Krinsky, who is the chair of the Skyway Park Conservancy, with exciting updates about Skyway Park in our neighborhood. With that, I'm just going to do a little regular business. We have the treasurer's report that came in from Mia, our treasurer, but I'm going to read it on her behalf. These are year-end bank balances as of 12/31/20. Our total balance was $38,034.54. In the general fund, we had $2,304.18. In the Bergen Arches Fund, we had $30,245.03. And in the Bergen Square Fund, we had $5,485.33. We're trying to do our best to do year-end fundraising, try and get everything reset for the new year. If you haven't become a member yet, I encourage everyone who's listening to join us over at JSQCA.com. And there you can fill out the membership form, become a member. Dues are $25. If you became a member in basically the last quarter of last year, November, December, those dues are good for 2021. But if you're watching this and you haven't paid your dues yet, or if you're new to the association and you just want to help support us and our mission, and there's other member benefits I'll talk about later in the meeting, please, JSQCA.com. Okay, thank you. Next order of business. Just need to approve the minutes from our last meeting was November. We normally have a holiday social meeting in December, but obviously this year we weren't able to accommodate that. So we need to approve the minutes from the November meeting. I'm going to ask that we approve the meetings, that we use the archive video on Facebook, which is the live stream of the whole meeting, that serve in lieu of paper minutes. And I ask unanimous consent by the members that be approved. If you don't agree, you don't want to adopt the minutes, or if you want to make any edits, please email hello@jsqca.com. Okay, just for that order of business. And if you have any other questions, concerns, anything else, hello@jsqca.com is the best way to get in touch with us. As I mentioned at the top, we're streaming this on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you have any questions for our speakers, for me, for the association in general, you want to have a side conversation, we are able to monitor the chat while the meeting is going on. In fact, I can make the chat appear right there as you guys talk. So whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook, me, the speakers, we can all see the chat. That's how we're going to take questions from the group. And there's going to be plenty of time for Q&A during the meeting today. So please, even though we're remote, even though we're not in person, I want everyone to stay involved. I want your voices to be heard. So chat is a place to do that. Okay. And with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Jake Hudnut is the Municipal Prosecutor and the head of the Quality of Life Task Force. Before that, he was Public Defender here in Jersey City. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Jake, good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to speak with you.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So if you want to just introduce yourself, introduce your department, what you've been working on, and let me know when you want to bring Omni on, and you can take it from here.
Great. Yeah, you can bring Omni on now.
Sure.
I'm just fixing my hair in the camera there. All right, so I can take it away, right, Kevin?
All yours.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me, to you and your group. Neighborhood associations sort of drive our work. One of the favorite parts of my job is getting to speak to all the neighborhood associations throughout the city. And as a former neighborhood association president, I know that not only is your work, whether as a member or on the executive board, is not easy, but it is certainly nonetheless important in letting us in city government know where our attention is needed. I am just going to give you a background on what the Municipal Prosecutor's Office does very, very quickly, what the Mayor's Quality Life Task Force is, and why those two things are going to merge and expand. And then I want to leave the most amount of time for any questions, or if you want to point me toward where our work is needed, I certainly want to hear that. So in New Jersey, you have county prosecutors that handle felonies, and then basically everything else is handled by local prosecutors. In Jersey City, I have been the municipal prosecutor since July of 2018. We have an office of 10 attorneys, 5 support staff, and 3 police officers on loan to our office to investigate quality of life issues. Our jurisdiction is basically misdemeanors and code enforcement, and of course, traffic. And we're only one of 2 full-time municipal prosecutor offices in the state, the other being Newark, and even at that measure, we're probably twice as large as their office. So we really have built this into the flagship office in the state, and we hope other municipalities start replicating what we've done in the past 2.5 years. The Mayor's Quality of Life Task Force is something that goes all the way back to Mayor Brett Schundler in the 90s, and basically it is a collection of city offices to sort of address quality of life issues. It has taken many forms since then. It was run under the Department of Public Works at times, it was run under the police department at times, and it was even run directly out of the mayor's office at times. Shortly after I became prosecutor, I approached the mayor about bringing it back and moving it under my office because all of the work that the prior Mayor Quality Life task forces were doing, when I looked into the past, it seemed that the weakest link sort of was what happened in court. If all of the work of all the summons writing offices of the city end up in court and the municipal prosecutor has the final say on those summonses, I said to the mayor, let's sort of bring the municipal prosecutor in on the front end to sort of streamline enforcement, have the most integrity, make sure the summonses and complaints that the task force are writing are written in a way that will hold up in court, in a way that'll have the most impact in court. And the mayor said, go for it. So, and the other benefit, of course, is if the municipal prosecutor's office is involved at the ground level while the task force is observing issues, then when an assistant prosecutor is court, one of those 10 lawyers I told you about are making arguments in front of judges about fines or telling the defense attorney what needs to be done to avoid fines, to solve problems, my office will have much more context than we ever had before because we are able to say how this is affecting the community. Many of your emails, many neighborhood association emails, of course, if it's from a resident, we block the identifiers, are brought to court and read to judges. So what might just seem on a piece of paper like a lot with tall weeds, we can sort of articulate why it's affecting the neighborhood around it, how it's attracting disorder, how it's attracting loitering, how it's attracting litter, and sort of all that context that we need to have meaningful results in municipal court. And the other thing I looked at was there's the offices with summons writing authority in Jersey City are as follows, and there's a lot, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Fire, safety, police, construction code, zoning, housing code, sanitation, commerce, and health. I found that in the past at task force sites, those folks wouldn't necessarily go at the same time. Or if they went, they might go on the same day, but take separate vehicles. So I got the police department to lend us a big bus, and I would make all the inspectors go at the same time with either myself or an assistant prosecutor to help on any legal decisions. And they would look at issues together to make sure that nothing fell through the cracks, because there's very few quality of life issues that can be solved by one office. And we focused on inattentive property owners, absentee landlords, local polluters, and other negligent businesses. We've had great success. We've gotten meaningful results. We've led with education before enforcement. Sometimes our results come from what happens in the courtroom. Sometimes our results come from the conversations that happen while the task force was inspecting. About 5 months into the task force, we noticed, because we have to notice landlords when we're coming under ordinance and state law. We noticed that about 5 months in, once they kind of realized and had read about the task force in the news, they would send superintendents and contractors to meet us and literally make repairs while we were walking around some of the apartment buildings. In those instances, summonses and violations weren't necessary because the problems were being solved before our eyes, and that is equally satisfactory to us. This summer, the mayor's office invited me to think about expanding and codifying the task force's best practices. So as of January 1, we have become a division within the Department of Public Safety. Within that division, myself as municipal prosecutor will oversee the Division of Quality of Life. Under my direction will be the Office of the Municipal Prosecutor, where court litigation will happen on quality of life issues. The Resident Response Center has come under the Division of Quality of Life, and that long list I told you about with respect to how many summons writing authorities we have, it's actually an unusually high number, not only for New Jersey, but across the country. So what we did is we took the 3 that write local ordinances and combined them into one Office of Code Compliance. The rest will continue enforcing state administrative code. And so we're going to reduce the number of offices we have for efficiency. No one's losing their jobs. We're just sort of bringing everybody together, cross-training them. So that way, when I go to an apartment building, I don't need 3 inspectors. I'll just need 1 when I'm dealing with local ordinances. And with that, I just want, I have not Omni Aviv with me today. I don't know if she's able to show herself and say hello. There she is. Hi.
Hi.
Say hi to everybody, Omni.
Hi, everyone. My name's Omni. I work in the Resident Response Center. We take the complaints for constituents when they call. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if anyone has complaints here, let us know and we'll get back to you.
And I want to give, is my dear friend Renee out there? I'm sure she is.
I know she had a question that she submitted beforehand. I'm waiting to see if she puts it in the chat.
Is it about Aki Supermarket?
Yes, there was a email thread going on before that.
I feel like a mind reader, like Johnny Carson here. Yeah, no. So actually, I was going to proactively bring that up because I got looped into that email after all of you were on it. I think I got it late Thursday. So
I give some background on it.
Say that again.
Do you want to share some background on the issue?
Well, it's it's a classic example of the culture change that, my biggest thrill is, I don't write summonses, but when a summons is written to a business, because I think, there's this notion right now called equitable enforcement, meaning that a prosecutor's dockets shouldn't be filled with just individuals, that it should be balanced between individuals and also corporate business entities, whether it's LLCs, whether it's landlords, restaurant owners that are violating the public's trust and affecting the public. And I think a lot of times police and code enforcement didn't feel that they had the support that if they wrote a summons to a local business, it would be carried through all the way to court. And I also think that when it comes to blight, which I'll give some background, but I think businesses and property owners and landlords like to talk their ways out of their responsibilities. And so this supermarket is one example, as far as I can understand. I mean, I didn't come in until Thursday, and I'm familiar with it. We've been addressing other issues there for the past 2.5 years. But I believe there's either a lot next door or a parking lot, and it just seems to be a cycle of it becomes overgrown and they get summoned for overgrown weeds. And residents, people passing by are just dumping trash. And my understanding is, some of the frustration was like, well, we'll never be able to catch somebody littering unless we station a police officer. And obviously we don't have the resources for that. And that's also not exactly the kind of interaction we want between people and police in this moment, and in the conversations happening right now with public safety. But really, the responsibility is the businesses at the end of the day, because if their parking lot didn't have 6-foot weeds, people wouldn't feel it's appropriate to litter, right? So we did send police yesterday, because I did just get the email Thursday night, and we educated them that they can't talk their way out of the litter issue, that it's because of the way they maintain their property. Police were on site for about 90 minutes, spoke to the manager, spoke to the owner. And starting next week, we're just going to put them on the police's. I have 3 officers assigned to my office. It's just going to be on their stops. And if they want a litter and high weeds ticket every single day, then that's what they're going to get. And that's $2,000 a pop. So, you know, I say that to say that we are committed to putting the responsibility back on businesses. You know, there's another example that happened 2 summers ago. Maybe it was in the Journal a few times, but a property investor from Brooklyn bought a home on Fulton Ave. It was not occupied. It was vacant. It was overgrown, windows broken, boarded up, tall weeds, abandoned vehicle. And we can summon all those things, but it sort of takes time to get the result in court. But he was having trespass issues, drug use issues, not him having drug use issues, but people going on the property. And his solution was to adopt a pit bull and chain it to the porch and have somebody down the street feed it once a day. And his justification was, well, if your city wasn't so unsafe, I wouldn't need to do that. Well, we charged him with criminal animal abuse and said, no, if your property wasn't so unmaintained, you wouldn't have issues with trespass and all the other disorder happening on your property. So it's actually your responsibility. So that's sort of the conversations we are trying to have in the field, to kind of put the emphasis back on inattentive property owners, absentee landlords, negligent businesses, and things of that nature. And so, that being said, somebody asked about parking enforcement. We do work with them. Parking tickets are civil offenses, so none of my lawyers stand up on them in court. They're sort of self-proving offenses.
Hang on a second, Jake, real quick. Let me bring in Anu. She's the chair of our outreach committee. And Anu, if you want to handle the questions from the chat, I just want to read the questions so that everybody can hear it if they don't see it in the chat.
Awesome. And let me just wrap up on parking. So when you contest a parking ticket, unlike a criminal or code matter, the burden shifts back to you to say why you aren't responsible. So I work with parking, they're a stakeholder in my work, but they're not responsive to me as prosecutor because my office does not prosecute their tickets. With that being said, if you want to start going through the questions, I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. I think we're at somewhere between 15 and 18 minutes for questions.
Anu, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, great. Yeah. So I think there was one question about, hold on, yeah, control over rent leveling board, or OLT. I'm sorry, did you answer this question already?
I didn't. Is there a specific question, or that you just want a general understanding of it?
Do you have any control over rent leveling board or OLT?
I do prosecute, well, one, they're all stakeholders in the Mayor's Quasi-Life Task Force, but the mayor appoints the members of the rent leveling board. Where my office comes into play is the rent leveling board is only able to do its, and just so folks know, that's where determinations of lawful rent increases are heard. It's an administrative body. Where my, outside of the municipal court, the Office of Landlord-Tenant Relations sort of acts as the move-in, so to speak, before that board, what would in effect be a prosecutor. Where my office comes into play is the rent leveling board is only able to hear those issues if a landlord is registering the rents for his or her building. And when I was hired as prosecutor in 2018, the same day a new director of housing preservation was hired because the mayor recognized that the city needed to be more aggressive on this front. So since that time, we have been culling all the buildings that are required to submit the rent registrations, and we've been writing summonses. First, we started with a warning letter, and then we moved to summonses, and we've been summonsing hundreds of landlords on failure to submit rents. One landlord that owns about 30 properties took us all the way up through the appellate process, Superior Court, then appellate court. They hired a former attorney general who's now in private practice, and we won all those appeals. And so our ordinance held up. So we haven't caught up with 30 years of the city not being aggressive yet, but in the past 2 or 3 years, we've really made great strides to get to where we need to be. So that's sort of how my office fits into rent registration and rent leveling board work.
Okay, there is another question about pigeon feeding on Romaine Avenue side of, Romaine Avenue. And sorry, I'm having problems seeing the questions on my computer, so I'm looking at my phone to see the question.
Say it again.
There was a question about pigeon feeding on Romaine Avenue.
Yeah, I can look into that and work with environmental health on that. Looks like somebody's adding to that too.
Yeah. I don't see any other real questions.
I have a question that was pre-submitted by one of our members. I'll read it for you guys. Our area is deeply impacted by absentee landlords of businesses and homes who frequently neglect taking care of their property and do little to address their tenants in violation. Living here for almost 3 years now, it's the same offenders week after week that we see reported on See Click Fix that make our neighborhood unsightly and unsafe. Can you please explain how repeat violations are addressed by the Resident Response Center? What remedies do we have as our residents to hold our neighbors and absentee landlords accountable?
Absolutely. One of the reasons we are bringing RRC closer into my work is so we can better identify those repeat offenders. Literally, like one of the things we will be working on in 2021, because we are mandated a computer system we can use in the municipal court. It's the same system throughout the state. It's archaic. A landlord might be written by LLC, might be written by registered agent, by member. So the municipal court system does not allow us to pull one offender's information. What we've started to do in my office since March was start filing things by property address with quality of life issues, so we can more easily identify repeat properties. Now, that doesn't necessarily help if it's a landlord that owns multiple properties. So what we're going to be doing with resident response, sort of creating roles of court liaison between my office and RRC, so we can more easily identify those folks. And in fact, under our ordinances, that $2,000 fine, I indicated that most summonses go between $250 and $2,000. If you're a repeat offender on that same ordinance violation, it's allowed to escalate, and that's something we want to start focusing on. Look, again, I'll acknowledge that the community is our eyes and ears, and you're on the ground. So if you know a particular repeat offender, trying to chat here, I don't know how to do it. Omni, if you know how to chat, and now I've blocked the screen.
It doesn't look like it's scrolling down.
It's prosecutor at jcnj.org. If Omni or somebody in the executive board will put that on there. Please let me know, and I'll get back to you, and we'll come up with a strategy, and we'll figure out how we can hold the worst offenders accountable. Because I'm going to acknowledge sometimes you folks might know more than us, and that's why these meetings are so important.
I'm actually going to bring up the chat so hopefully everyone can see it. But yeah, it's not showing up. Well, We'll get rid of that. There are a lot of questions about pigeon feeding on Romaine, on other blocks, on Garrison. Renee is on here saying that, in her opinion, that the main problem with Aki is the pigeon feeding situation, not so much littering. So could you perhaps give a, just like, what is the process for addressing that? You know, do you have the ability to address that?
There would be regulations with environmental health, the Office of Division of Environmental Health in Health and Human Services. So Omni and I are going to get the specifics, and we're going to email you next week so you can distribute to your membership.
Awesome, fantastic. I actually have a question. There was a Young Republican convention that took place in Liberty State Park about 2 weeks ago, even though it might feel like a year ago. I remember you posting on social media that you were going to investigate that situation. Whatever came of that?
So my dear friend, the Attorney General, took over the investigation. So I have to direct your inquiries to Trenton. But what we were able to do before that happened, and honestly, I do think that Jersey City shed light on that. And then the governor addressed it in his daily briefing. And then I think that's probably why the Attorney General took it over, because the governor did give credit to Jersey City. My intention was to subpoena their surveillance videos and sign-in sheets, find out who was there, and investigate criminally accordingly. But that will rest with the Attorney General's office. What we were able to do, though, nonetheless, and just so folks know, it's state land, so we can only investigate by invitation. And early, for folks that don't know, there was a party on, I believe, a Thursday night, the same night the New York Times kind of wrote a story with some of the postings of Republican congressmen and talking heads taking their masks off and posing, and sort of taunting Governor Cuomo, not realizing they were in New Jersey. And so the mayor and I drew attention to it on social media. It kind of blew up, made the Friday news cycle. By the end of the day, the governor had addressed it in his daily briefing. Early that morning, my quality of life police officers and myself were invited by State Park Police to handle the investigation because my office has been overseeing COVID-19 enforcement since March. We don't have ABC liquor control over the state park, otherwise we would have pulled their liquor license. State ABC has that. But what we do have that they can't take from us is health authority, because they are a licensed food establishment in the four corners of Jersey City, despite it being on state land. We did order them closed to our health department until they submitted an operational plan that satisfied us that they understood the various executive orders required of them in any restaurant and food and dining establishment. We have done that throughout the pandemic, and normally a restaurant or bar can get us that operational plan in a matter of hours. It's not rocket science. It's all the things that we as consumers and customers know restaurants and bars need to do. They took about 10 days to do it. They were closed that entire time. I would imagine they lost business. That was not our intention. Why they took 10 days to submit what other restaurants took couple hours to submit, I don't know, but we were able to get what I think is a meaningful result in our limited subject matter jurisdiction, which is health. So they were closed for about 10 days. And the criminal end, I hope it's investigated thoroughly, and but it's with the Attorney General's office.
Fantastic. I have one question here about snow removal. It comes from one of our members, Adam Cohen. Residents in the St. Paul's area have been filing complaints about unshoveled snow in front of residential addresses. And as the winter goes on, obviously, this is going to be a continuing issue. And sidewalks that are the city's responsibility after a snowstorm. The RRC response was to ask for days if the issue had been resolved, and then say that no summons would be issued because when somebody was sent to inspect, the issue was unfounded, i.e., after more than a week, the snow had melted.
Sure.
If residents are providing photographic evidence, why can't the RRC issue summonses? I also, anecdotally, I had the same issue on 139 in Palisade, unshoveled for the, basically the whole duration of the snowstorm. What can RRC do about that?
So I'll just clarify that we asked for updates from constituents and from the office that we reported to, or where constituents reported to. The resident response center does not issue citations or summonses. That is the other departments, just to clarify.
Yes, Ami is correct. I want to say that, so this merger started January 1. The last snowstorm, which I think was December 17th, I actually spent it in the resident response center to kind of get a feel for how this works. There is certainly room for improvement on the enforcement end. Like so many other things I've discovered in the last 2.5 years, formerly this was responsibility of the sanitation inspectors. Now, while before this merger, anyone with a summons book in their hand in the city was responsive to me as a prosecutor, they weren't necessarily directly under me as prosecutor. However, once commerce, sanitation, and housing merge into code compliance, that office will be directly under me. So I intend to sharpen up our enforcement of unshoveled private property, because there are clear ordinances on the books. And yeah, we'll get better with that.
What about city property? Because I think that's what Adam's question was about. Property that was city's responsibility.
Well, someone did mention summonses, though, and obviously the city can't.
Okay. You can't come summon the city.
Donald Trump might think you can summons or pardon yourself, but yeah, we're not in the habit of summonsing ourselves. We will, I will do, Omni, let's talk with Judy. Judy's the director of the Resident Response Center, and we'll just make sure that there's the strongest line of communication between the snowplow operators and the RRC. Look, the RRC is the catcher of information, and our goal under this division of quality of life, it's now under me, is to only make it stronger. The folks that work there are really hardworking, and they want to solve your problems. They enjoy constituency services, which is hard in that there's always a great volume of it, and our job is to make it better and better. So we will talk to the director of RRC about that and make sure we tighten it up.
Okay. I have one question. I'm going to make this the final question, and it's actually from our next speaker, so it's a good segue. But it's from Deb Italiano. Good morning. How does the Quality of Life Task Force interact with urban forestry issues in Jersey City? For example, tenants who want trees on their street, tenants who want trees on their street, but landlords are unresponsive. Also, is Quality of Life now responsible to collect fees/penalties for improper tree removal?
Yeah, I just want to hop over. Folks are putting specific addresses that the city is responsible for. Omni, if you could just capture those, and then we'll work with sanitation next week, specifically on those streets, to let them know that we heard from a neighborhood association that we're not doing a good enough job.
Fantastic.
Omni, if you could jot them down. It looks like Adam Cohen is sending some.
Sure.
Folks, if you're not confident we're catching all the chats, prosecutor@jcnj.org. Back to Deborah's question. We have a municipal forester. He is great. There's two parts to this question. Tenants who want trees on their streets by landlord are unresponsive. I'm going to need follow-up on the second part of the question. I totally am excited to answer. I need clarity on that. If you're saying the tenant wants his or her landlord to request a tree, but the landlord is not carrying that request to the city, it sounds like you're asking, can a tenant request a tree? If that's the case, I want to look into that legally, because look, if the landlord lives in, Pennsylvania, and the tenant lives here 365 days a year, I think the tenant should have a say in whether the tree is out front. But obviously there's legal property issues with that. So Deborah, if you want to clarify that, prosecutor@jcnj.org. Is Quality of Life responsible for collecting fines, penalties for improper tree removal? 110%. And again, Deborah, I don't know if you were on here earlier, I love summoning contractors, LLCs, folks that think just because they're in business, they're above the law. Our municipal forester is very aggressive in terms of monitoring the city, and he lets my Quality of Life police officers know when a tree, particularly a historic tree, has been cut down. And we issue $2,000 summonses to the contractor and even the new property owner if it appears that they had knowledge that that tree was being cut down. We've gotten very steep fines in court for that. Plus, we require them to replace any tree that they cut down. When these three offices are combined into one, we're also adding a bunch of chapters enforcement that our ordinance never said who was supposed to enforce it, including this. So when an ordinance doesn't say who's supposed to enforce it, it defaults to the police department. So once those 35 quality life inspectors are up and running and cross-trained, they will also be looking for this on their daily patrols. So we've been really strong with this last year, and we're only going to get stronger. And again, because that's a contractor, quite often a city contractor coming here and cutting down our trees, it's something I feel very strongly about.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with that being the last question. I really want to say thank you to Jake and Omni for joining us today. And Jake, you want to share your email again? I'll drop it in the chat.
Yeah, prosecutor@jcnj.org. And you know what? Sometimes that takes a minute to get to me. So like a day, J Hudnut, JHUDNUT, jcnj.org comes right to me. And I see Katie has a question. Best way to report housing code is RRC. You can also do the prosecutor one. No, Director Hendon will now, she used to be in charge of code enforcement and landlord tenant. Now that code compliance under me will take housing code, Director Hendon will just do landlord tenant issues, as well as Airbnb enforcement and vacant building registry enforcement and rent control enforcement. So housing code can either come directly to my general email inbox or my direct one, or RRC.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Again, Jake, Omni, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great weekend, guys. Okay. I'm sorry I didn't introduce Anu at the top. Anu is the co-chair of our outreach committee. You're going to be, are you able to see the chat? Can you take the questions?
I can't. I'm working on the survey. So
oh, you're working on the survey. Okay, got it. Which you'll hear more about later. All right, awesome. Thank you, Anu. All right, with that, I'm going to move on to our next speakers. Today, we're joined by Deb Italiano, who is the founder and chair of Sustainable JC, which I apologize was incorrectly listed on the original flyer, and Tom Zinkraff, who's also a part of Sustainable JC. They're going to be talking to us about urban forestry issues, among other things. So I'm going to bring Deb and Tom on, and I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Good morning, Deb. Good morning, Tom.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Very good, very good. How are you today?
Very good. Glad to meet you finally.
Yeah.
Your reputation precedes you. So this is my pleasure.
Yes, I remember you presented at Journal Square Community Association at one of our earliest meetings back in the day, and it's good to have you back.
Oh, how nice. Thank you so much. This is sort of, I think, a good circling back. It's an important conversation, and I kind of, I'm looking for more community support around this initiative. So you have a pretty potent group. The Journal Square neighborhood is a target area for us, which I'll get into what that means exactly in a moment. But I think what would be useful, and I just want to make sure Tom's on the line, right?
I am. There might be a little background noise. Very coincidentally, they're actually cutting a tree down next door. So,
oh, Lord.
What a coincidence, right? But yes, thank you for having us. We're excited to show the application this morning.
Fantastic.
Okay, very nice. So do you have the PowerPoint, Kevin?
Yes, the slides. Yeah, they're here as a PDF. So when you're ready, I'll make it full screen and we can just go from there.
Okay, why don't we just jump right in here? So let's make it full screen. And what I wanted to do was use the same presentation, if you will, that we've been walking around various municipal offices, right? So Sustainable JC participates on the Shade Tree Committee. We have a seat on that committee. And we also, for example, I've spent this START working group, which many of you now know to have come out with a lot of public discourse about the long-term control plan and the reinvention of Jersey City's CSO management, whether it's expansion of our sewer system or what we're about to do to complement that with green infrastructure. There's a lot of outreach and requests for public survey feedback about the alternatives coming. So that's what that working group is. So next slide, we actually presented to them about the initiative this past week. Prior to that, in November, we went to the Environmental Commission. Back in August, we were presenting as an update to the Shade Tree Committee. We had announced this initiative back in February after we published a spot check report that was done for us by the University of Vermont Spatial Analytics Lab, which is one of the most prestigious GIS labs in the country. They're affiliated with the U.S. Forest Service Research Division. And they showed the trend line in Jersey City going down, meaning more deterioration around our tree canopy. So in 2015, most people are aware around this topic, trees in Jersey City, that the Environmental Commission sponsored a study. And that 2015 study used 2013 data. So at this point in time, which is one of the things we're asking the municipality to do, is to update that study, do a new refreshed canopy study, especially if there are decisions being made about refreshing the canopy. At that time, when it was published, it showed a 17% canopy cover. We are now down to 10.9%. Next slide, please. So back in February, we announced that we were taking this on. We were going to do a tree mapping census, the banner namesake for that campaign. We can't manage what we do not measure. And brought to bear this past year for an April Earth Day 2020 kickoff, despite COVID, a very successful first season of tree mapping. And we'll get to show you what the results of that have been. So if we go to the next slide. Our presentation in August basically recapped what we laid out for the Shade Tree Committee back in February. And all these are links that folks could digest offline. But basically, we have a very robust technology platform. It's a data management platform, which is kind of different than anything the city has worked with before regarding trees. And Tom's going to get into some of the advantages that we've built into this, what we're being called now by the state, after we presented to Trenton on the initiative, an award-winning platform. And we're hoping to partner with the city of Jersey City. It has a capability to integrate all the city's data and the diverse, pieces of information that might weigh in around decisions as to how to restore the canopy. So, it's an analytical machine and can produce really great reporting to give feedback day to day to the forester or to other city offices that need to make decisions on this. Next slide, please. So again, the key piece of information we kicked the year off with was that we have a trend line that is not good. Back in 2015, the Environmental Commission targeted planting 30,000 trees to bring what was a 17% canopy cover at that time up to 20%. That had never been done. Plus, with natural attrition and the various, given that we've had the highest rate of new development in the state, tree removals by developers, and what they obviously do is get permission for this. But on one hand, what has occurred is that the lag in the development coming online, and frankly, the removal of mature trees being replaced with 2-3-inch caliber baby trees, are not producing obviously the same level of shade. In many cases, shade trees are being replaced by ornamentals, But net, the removal and the attrition has brought our canopy cover down more than another 6%. Next slide, please. So the initiative itself kicked off. The thought we had was that on Earth Day and Arbor Day last season, we were going to have all these corporate volunteers come out and do a couple of big, either park projects or street tree projects, which are two terms I want you to keep in mind because they are different. Certainly the parks attribute to the full of our canopy, but we have 2 county parks and a state park in Liberty State Park, which is the only urban park in the, state's portfolio. But that covers off with a chunk of our canopy cover. But the real management issue is street trees, right? So to the extent, and we have the previous J.C. Forrester, Ryan Metz, and some advisory coming out of the New Jersey Forestry Association and the New Jersey Shade Tree Federation. That advisory triumvirate is very potent for us, sort of guiding a lot of what they've learned from doing municipal inventories into the technology of this platform, which is very user-friendly, but very robust on the back end. So instead, we did a socially distanced launch. We have now over 300 tree mappers on our list of people who have not only signed the registry, which folks need to do to affiliate themselves with the project by neighborhood, but we mapped out these 35 neighborhoods and have the goal here is to have a neighborhood captain or 2 for every neighborhood. And we've gotten, probably many volunteers to step into that role. We don't have all 35 neighborhoods covered, but we do have at least half of them covered. And for you guys, Chris Lamb, who you all know, is your neighborhood captain. While he contributed enormously to this effort in terms of mentorship and education, and we've published his JC Guide of Common Trees as a learning tool for those folks that are coming online, he really had some difficulty getting interest from the, constituency up there at Journal Square. I live downtown and we've gotten a lot of downtown done. There are several neighborhoods down here, but we're having some, I would say, pangs around how little we were able to accomplish, since that was one of our goals, to inventory the larger neighborhoods. So Chris needs help. We'd like to put out a call for volunteers now. We'll put you in touch with our website, which is an easy way to get started on this. The season officially kicks off probably close to Earth Day this year, when leaves are formally on the trees. We're coordinating just in terms of parks and neighborhoods to bring on more what we're calling park captains. So neighborhood captains and park captains are like first base coaches in terms of what goes on in those neighborhoods. We are collaborating on this initiative with the Jersey City Parks Coalition, and we have our 2020-2021 game plan report of what we did this past season and what's coming up next season, presenting to them later this month. So this is out of date where it says current OTM results. That link will take you to the current map platform where you can see trees in your neighborhoods and get some reporting. It's a live database. And when we presented this back in August, there were 4,600 trees we had mapped at that time. To date, it's a little over 6,100. And we've now incremented that annual cost savings in terms of monetized eco benefits to the city, which includes anything from lowering the overall cost and usage, certainly, of energy, to what translates to, if you can consider this, because you're going to see what our eco benefits calculator does, which is a very robust sustainability reporting tool because it breaks down these eco benefits, but it also is building the business case showing that those 6,100 trees we now have this annual return on investment, if you will, saving the cities $400,000 a year. We think that there is, based on Ryan Metz, the previous J.C. Forester's estimate of street trees in Jersey City, somewhere between maybe 9 and 12,000. So let's call it 10,000. If what we do at the end of the coming season is complete, which we think we can, this was originally intended as a 2-year-long project, as most cities that are, our size or bigger. Frankly, New York City, for example, much bigger, does their census in 2 years. Other cities our size take 2 years. So that seems to be the function, certainly, of how many volunteers you have, but just a targeted dateline. So if we have approximately 10 or 11,000 trees, and if you're looking at a monetized annual cost savings benefit to the city of $1 million, let's say, right, it makes the case to invest in urban forestry assets. You don't get that kind of annual dividend, right, on any other investment. So just keep that in mind as we talk about what we're trying to do here with this campaign. Not only build a decision-making framework for, municipal decision makers and provide this day-to-day operational tree data platform for the forester, but if we're able to report on sustainability metrics and also let council and neighborhood associations like yourselves understand the monetized asset benefit of trees, it makes it easier to ask to have the municipal budget include more money, which has been what we've been told for years, because we've been working on this for years. For example, back in 2015, the Environmental Commission asked SJC, along with the Parks Coalition and NJCU, to help out and ground truth the satellite study that was done at that time. So while we've done a bunch of other tree stuff, like tree plantings, and hosted the tree ambassador training at Dickinson with the New Jersey Tree Foundation, we also spearheaded an early pilot using the open tree map to understand how could we educate the public to participate in doing an inventory, and also in the process engage and emerge a stewardship brigade for Jersey City. Because two things we were told along the way: there's no money to restore, except for bits and pieces here and there to restore the canopy, but it's also the case that just a couple people, a forester, a senior forester and a junior forester out of the Parks and Forestry Division, and a small staff, have a really hard time managing all the tree stuff in the city. So wouldn't it be great, and that's what we're building now, this neighborhood network, people on the ground who know the trees in their neighborhood, right? They know what the issues of the trees are. They've inventoried the trees. They've reported on the health of these trees. If there are forester issues that we want to raise, whether it's in the power lines, the canopy of a tree, or the roots of a tree are creating different from the usual sidewalk raise in Jersey City. But if it's truly a tripping, hazard in the middle of the sidewalk, we can literally create reporting on some of these issues for the forester using this platform. And he could rely, when there are see-click-fix, complaints about trees, he can rely on this network of on-the-ground, tree ambassadors that we're training to corroborate information, to assist with tree plantings, to further train for tree pruning, which is our vision of how this will evolve. Okay, I think there's just one more slide before Tom comes on here. Oh yes, what we do have is a robust partnership with other tree people, let's call it that. And at the professional level, we have the U.S. Forest Service, New York City field station, who we're currently in a grant with to produce a layer to open tree map. And we're hoping to hear back on that proposal. And if we don't get the award, we'll resubmit it because it's a really important project. It will basically add a people tier and a community organizational tier to this very tree-centric database we have. Tom's going to show you all the different views you can get to and how we aggregate information on the open tree map in a moment. But if we were able to look at the map by neighborhood and see who the neighborhood captains are in the teams, let's say those 300 plus people, that we want to grow to double that size this season. We're looking to increase that 300 head count to 600. And we think we can do it, certainly with your help. And we need, and I'll say it again, more volunteers in the Journal Square neighborhood. But what we want to show are individuals and organizations and where they're operating on the ground, if they're covering off an XYZ neighborhood, more than one neighborhood, if they're citywide, people who could be called on for stewardship of our urban forest. So this is something that the U.S. Forest Service New York City Field Station has done for 11 other cities across the country. And so we'd be in very good company as a cohort on a project like this. And, potentially we can partner with others, in going after initiatives that would add value to what we've done so far with the open tree map and what we're trying to do here regarding community stewardship. So we can talk more about that offline. So the next slide here, I think I'm going to introduce Tom to give you a walkthrough of our SJC Open Tree Map platform. Thanks, Tom.
Great, thank you, Deb. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's hope this works, and it looks like it is. And we're going to be diving through the Open Tree Map platform. So in the interest of time and to make sure we have time for questions, we'll just go through some of the really important pages for us.
Hey, Tom, let me just make sure that your screen is being shared, because currently it's my screen. Hang on one sec.
Okay, no problem. I see that it says it's sharing my screen.
There you go.
So,
is that what you want?
Assuming that you see Open Tree Map, then yes, that sounds perfect.
It should be good. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
So this is our main map, right? So Open Tree Map. Open Tree Map is an open source system. And what that means is another company called Azavia wrote this code and they released it to the public for free. And we were able to take this code on and make some changes, fix a few issues, contribute back to the community. And now we have this thing up and running for Jersey City. So starting off with the main map, right, we see this is, this is Jersey City. I guess we'll go a little bit over Journal Square. We have a few different types of maps that we use. So right now we use Google Maps, and we can switch between our streets view or our hybrid view, which is what a lot of our mappers like to use. You can actually see the trees on the map. For our purposes, we're going to look at the street view. So on the map, we see a lot of green dots, and we see some pink dots. Each of these green dots represents one tree that has been either mapped from a volunteer or imported from our data import process. Because remember, Open Tree Map, this is data management, right? We show it and it looks great and it looks really slick, but in the end, we're managing all of this tree data and we're maintaining this tree inventory in a very consistent and easy to report on manner. So we have all these trees, we have the tree pits, everything's really cool, but we wanted to add a little more interesting data to this. So we went through Jersey City's open data and we were able to mix in different layers onto this map. We're able to separate each of these trees by ward. We're able to separate these by neighborhood even. And in fact, we can even go even deeper into looking at parks. We can overlay parks and neighborhoods. We can look at the special improvement districts. And each of these layers, we're also going to be able to report on, and we'll see that in a little bit. The other thing that we're able to do is show the imported trees. So you'll see that now I have some blue dots, and each of the blue dots represents an imported tree. These are trees that we, for example, the forester had sent us a spreadsheet of a planting, a series of plantings, and we were able to incorporate that directly into our application. So on the right, we're going to see the eco benefits. Now, this is a really cool feature here. This is what Deb had referenced. So the eco benefits calculator, now it's the same calculator that's actually used by New York City's tree map. And this calculator came from a study done by the U.S. Forestry Service that effectively tracked trees for, I think it was 11 or 14 years. And this guy tracked trees for that long to determine all of these different metrics that we can now break down by individual tree. And he did this using two parameters, using the species information and using the diameter. And with those two, we're able to come up with all of these calculations on our platform. Now, for anyone who follows the U.S. Forestry Service, there is an update to this paper, and we have been looking into that, but that's in the works a little bit. So moving on. On the map, we can click individual trees, and we're able to go to a more details. But actually, I'll take a step back. We need to add a tree first. So let me walk you through how a user would add a tree, how a volunteer adds a tree. They would put a little dot down exactly where the tree is, and they'd be able to click next. And now we have a series of fields that we're going to require for this particular tree. First thing we require are 3 photos: a photo of the shape, a photo of the leaf, and a photo of the bark. So we're not, we're not the biggest tree experts, Deb and I, but we spoke to some tree experts, and those people had informed us that if we want to get good species information, we're going to need a photo of all 3 of these. And we'll see these come into play again in a little bit. We have a species drop down as well so that our users can guess the species. And that species guess is going to be really important. And we're looking at ways to enhance how can we guess species, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then we have other information: the tree height, the canopy height. Here's that diameter we had talked about, the tree condition, JC Forester issues. And we also have some planting site information. Now, these fields are customizable, so we can always add new fields, we can remove fields, and we can make this report, all the reporting, as customized as we would like. So, moving to the detail page, this is the detail of an individual tree. We're going to see that we audit everything about a tree, every change that gets made. We want to keep track of all this information over time. So we're going to make sure that we keep track of that through an audit history. We're going to show all of the information. We're going to show the individual photos that are labeled, whether it's the bark, the shape, or the leaf. And then at the bottom, and this is really cool, we have our annual ecosystem services. Now this section, it uses that exact same calculator from the prior page, except now we're able to see this for one individual tree. So very cool feature there.
So Tom, explain how, for example, so we have tree records for each tree, but we also have a tree record, so to speak, for every empty tree pit, right? So for example, people have probably been reading in the paper that the city has just completed their fall tree planting season, right? So it would be part of our work to provide an empty planting site report to neighborhood captains in the spring to go back and say, okay, was a tree planted this season by the forester? And that would presume that we haven't gotten the information from the city and we're on our own. We're trying to work out information sharing. We've not been that successful at this point. Potentially when the city adopts this project a little bit more, information sharing would be more forthcoming. But for instance, the forester might say, here are the addresses where we've planted new trees. So we would share that with a neighborhood captain, and that would be an assignment for the tree mappers in that neighborhood to go back and edit this empty planting site record, right? In some cases now, in case people aren't familiar, there's an intention, is what I'm going to call it, to eventually expand these planting sites. For instance, all new trees that are being planted by developers are planted to different dimensions for a tree planting site than a lot of what we see around Jersey City. So you may be seeing during the planting process, when the city, for example, this past fall, was expanding some of the old tree pit sizes to now accommodate the new larger tree pits, because we know that that works ultimately better for trees. So that's kind of the mechanics of how some of this might work.
Great digression. Thank you, Deb. And yes, we do store, some of these don't have completely filled in information. A lot of our initial empty tree pits was more to get the location correct. But remember, we can always go back. We can always click edit and edit any of these fields. And we do store this, and we can report on all of this information as well. It's a great point. So going back to the tree details. So we see all of the details of this tree. Everything's great. And remember, we wanted to make sure that our species validation was really good, because to get that eco benefits number, we need the species information. So we connected to iNaturalist. Now, iNaturalist is a citizen science website where people post any species on this planet, and then the community goes and helps verify these species. And in this website, we're actually able to post the trees. So when a tree mapper creates a tree record, we automatically post it to iNaturalist and let the community help determine the species. They actually also have a really cool machine learning algorithm that recently came out, and we're looking to integrate that as well. That does automatic species validation. Really cool stuff. So moving on, I wanted to quickly go through our management side just so everyone can see what it looks like. It's pretty cool. We can adjust fields through here. We can manage users. We can manage groups. We can also upload files. So this is how we can combine city data with all the volunteer data. It can all live in the same place, and we're going to validate that data to all look the same and to be very consistent. I won't go too much into this. It's not that interesting. But this is a really interesting page. This is our dashboard, and it's iteration 1. In the spring, we have an iteration, version 2 of this coming out that's going to look very slick. But it's already a very cool report. We're able to show the tree counts, the tree species, the tree conditions, the tree diameters, and we use the tree diameter as effectively a proxy measurement for age. So how many young, medium age and old trees do we have? And then we have the eco benefits. And all this is very similar to what we saw on the initial map, but we actually broke it down by all those aggregation levels. So we can look at different neighborhoods, and we can select a group of neighborhoods that we'd want to look at. We can look at parks, and we can break this down by any group of parks that we want to look at. And we also have the special improvement districts. All of these we're able to break down directly in our reporting and for any future reporting that we add. Now, some of the things that we're looking at is adding any additional fields that we add. How could we put empty tree pits into here, right? How can we show the percentage of empty tree pits to trees that are in specific areas? Tree density was an idea that we're still hammering out the details for, but that was a reporting idea. And honestly, any feedback anyone has for additional reports that they think would be interesting, we'd love to hear feedback and start adding some of these things for the spring. I guess at that, I was going to go through the cities version and how these, I guess I'll briefly do that.
Yeah,
if anyone's seen the city's website, of course, if anyone's seen the city website, they have their own tree canopy dashboard, and we really would like to mix these data sets. This is what they currently show, and they have some great data in here. I've gone through this data quite a bit, and there's a lot of really good stuff, but there's a lot of issues that we believe we could fix by merging the data sets and using a consistent platform. For example, we see that there's 4,000 trees in pits, but 3,000 trees. I don't think there's 1,000 tree pits here. What I think is that they looked for things labeled trees. However, some of your data points, such as these trees, are labeled differently on their system than all of the other trees. So a lot of our exercise right now is figuring out how can we merge all these data sets together, right? And if you go through their data, it comes from about 3 different data sources. And that's okay. We're going to have multiple data sources. It's about merging them all together to have a consistent platform and a consistent feel. So with that,
Tom pointed out also, one of the things that we're crazy about, and there's a special project and focus this winter before we come out with, the new featured OTM for this coming spring, which is to say, just to know we only have about 4 minutes left, okay? And then I will turn this over. But what we wanted to do was make sure that the data integrity issues, were all addressed. And we found some data integrity issues on the city's site, for example, with a total of maybe 3,000 trees or close to 4,000 trees. 1,000 of those are showing up as open and empty tree pits. We just don't think that's accurate. There are ways that we can cite anomalies in our database to make sure the data integrity is in place. So I'm ready to answer any questions. Again, in closing, 3 things that I would suggest that we're looking for support for. To complete this census, we need some more volunteers. You can visit our website to get onto the registry. We also are advocating for a new canopy study, and we're hoping to bring the Shade Tree Committee and the Environmental Commission together to host an exploration of that. We've not been successful thus far. And what we're focused on is making this, believe it or not, because it is award-winning, we're being told, available to other municipalities who are experiencing the same challenges as us. We are not alone, So questions. There was a question here about the city and their planting efforts. There is a natural attrition. I think the 2015 study pointed to 128 trees die every year, and that's on the low side, they said, right? So while this was maybe 250%, the 556 trees that were planted this season, it's really net, totally not enough to turn around a situation where we want to be better managing and protecting and restoring the canopy. So while that's a good start, and you have to commend everything, every step that is taken, it's just not enough. So since canopy cover for Journal Square is likely even more abysmal, have you engaged in any efforts with Ward C Councilman Boggiano? Has he offered any support? Well, I'm going to be speaking at council this Wednesday night. One of the things that we wanted to do after we just did some data checks for the platform was to provide each council person with an opportunity to view what we've done in their neighborhood. The report that came out showing 6% more deterioration actually shows that there's been some additional deterioration in Journal Square. So yes, he would want to know about that. So we will share that. We're taking the show on the road, so to speak. This is our first presentation this year. I thought maybe Rich might even be in attendance this morning. I was hoping that he would be, but we'll seek him out.
He may be watching from home.
Okay, other questions?
But in terms of other questions for the group, I think that about wraps it up. Do you want to share, anybody that's interested in getting in touch, volunteering, what's the best resource? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you guys?
Thank you so much. So if you go to sustainablejc.org, right, there are, there is a way to get in touch with the organization directly and put your subject matter, clearly into the subject line. But if you want to immediately jump in to this initiative, on our projects page, it's a pretty simple tab menu at the top. It's at the top of our projects page once you tune into that. Your first step would be to jump on our registry and, sign up affiliated with either your neighborhood and Journal Square or whoever's watching across the city. affiliate with your respective neighborhoods, and you would thereafter get all notifications from us. So you'll become aware of our winter education series and our upcoming spring training.
Well, that's fantastic. I guess that's going to wrap it up for you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for taking the time. And
This is terrific. Thank you so much for having us. That was really,
Thank you. This was great.
that was a great invitation.
awesome. Glad we were able to make it work. And I'm sure you guys will be following up with the Green Committee. So if anybody's interested in these issues and wants to stay on top of it, definitely check out sustainablejc.org. Definitely get involved with our Green Committee. Good place to work on this stuff. So Deb, Tom, thanks so much, guys. Have a good morning.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're ready to bring on our next speaker. Steve Krinsky is the chair of the Skyway Park Conservancy, and they have recently had some interesting and exciting announcements that I'm sure Steve is happy to share with us. Steve, good morning.
Hi, how you doing? Hello, everybody.
Hey,
let me jump right in. Thank you, Kevin.
Go right ahead.
Some of you may remember me when I came to one of your meetings about 2 years ago to share a slideshow on our proposal for Skyway Park. Well, I'm back today to tell you that the park is happening. Thanks to all the people who spoke out in support of Skyway Park, including members of the Journal Square Community Association. Mayor Fulop recently announced that Jersey City is moving forward with the park. I want to take a few minutes to give you an update and share some of our priorities as to where we go from here. Before I show you a few slides, though, let me mention a couple of things. One, our group, the Skyway Park Conservancy, is made up of environmental and community activists from a number of organizations in Hudson County, the Sierra Club, Hackensack Riverkeeper, Bike JC, and others. Over the past few years, we've been working with the mayor and his staff on Skyway Park, and we've now come to an agreement and will continue to work as partners with Jersey City on this exciting project. In the coming months, we'll be meeting with the mayor to sort out the details of the park, and we want to share with you this opportunity to help us create Jersey City's newest and what ultimately will be the largest municipal park. There are some issues that I want to bring up and get both your feedback and let you know a little bit about what we're thinking. But let me start with the slideshow, and yeah, we can make this full screen. How do I get this off? There we go. This is a opening slide that has a artist rendering of an idea for Skyway Park that's now obsolete. It shows soccer fields, and that's impossible because this has to be a passive park because of the cap on toxic waste underneath. And the park is very different, but it does give you an opportunity to see the Pulaski Skyway running through the middle, the Prologis warehouse in the background or in the midground, the very exciting Hackensack River walkway along the foreground, and way in the background, you can see New York City. So that gives you an idea a little about it. You'll also notice a body of water. Looks pretty beautiful there. It's not quite that pretty when you're there, when you're at the site. They call it the Sip Avenue Ditch. We prefer to call it Sip Creek, but in any case, it's a waterway that bisects the space. Let me go to the next slide, please. One of the best things about Skyway Park is its location. It's located at the foot of Sip Avenue across from Wonder Bagel, where Sip hits 1 and 9. It's about 1 mile. The entrance is about 1 mile from Journal Square. As I mentioned, the Pulaski runs through the middle of it. You go under the Skyway if you're coming from 1 and 9 to get to the water. It's 32 acres, although for some strange reason, the mayor and the city keep referring it, not consistently, as 10 acres. But I think that's, somebody just made a mistake. Notice how close Skyway Park is to Lincoln Park and Lincoln Park West. And the trail, which I marked on this slide, that runs through Lincoln Park West, plus a small paved walkway behind the Prologis warehouse, mean that connecting Skyway Park to Lincoln Park creates a nice piece of Hackensack River walkway. And that's really exciting. It's not our priority right now. Right now, our priority is the park itself, but it does give us a sense that this has great potential for the future. And by the way, and I'll mention this later very quickly, the trail south of Skyway, south of Lincoln Park rather, down to Society Hill is also quite appropriate and possible. Let's go to the next slide. And I wanted to show a picture of the Hackensack River and the Meadowlands when it was a place, hunting and fishing grounds for the indigenous Lenape people. And I went online and just Googled around. I found this really cool picture and I thought I'd put it up. It does give us an idea what the park, what the river looked like back then, and what hopefully someday soon parts of it will look like again. The Hackensack River runs from Rockland County in New York all the way down to the Newark Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. Go to the next one, Kevin. And I also found this picture, and I thought these two kind of tell us a little bit. No comment on this other than beautiful picture with the city in the background. When the Europeans came, next slide, sadly, the Meadowlands and the Hackensack River took a beating. Here's pig farms. It was known as a place of pig farms and a dump, a garbage dump. Next. It was polluted, a giant trash pile. Cities and factories dumped their waste into the river. I love to tell the story. I'm a retired teacher and my students love this one. About a town on the west side of the Hackensack River, I think it was North Arlington, that dumped its waste directly into a section that was built, carved out for their waste, that we like to call the poop canal. Next, another picture of the Hackensack River up near Route 3, quite polluted. Next one, yeah. And in Jersey City, the Hackensack River shore became home to warehouses, trucking firms, garbage dumps, and perhaps the most infamous example of pollution in Jersey City on the Hackensack River was the PJP landfill, which was basically a fire that burned years. They couldn't put it out. This picture was taken in 1973. Next. The fire department would come, spray it down, the fire would go out, and then days later or weeks later, it would flare up again. Next. And eventually, they had to make a major effort to clean it up. And they discovered, once the cleanup began, 30,000 barrels of toxic waste had been buried under the site. The people, next please, the people of Jersey City complained, and eventually the EPA came in and declared it a Superfund site. Next. I'm trying to go through the historical stuff quickly because I want to get to the current plan. Here's a great picture from 1985, Jim Florio, who later became governor. I love the fellow on the left with the gas mask. Next, please. So the EPA took it over in the early 80s, and it became a Superfund site, and the cleanup began. The cleanup took place over a 10-year period, I believe. And by 2012, next please. By 2012, the site was cleaned and available for reuse. A little more than half of it was sold off to the Prologis warehouse folks, and they built that warehouse. In exchange for the warehouse, the city promised the neighborhood of Marion, which is adjacent to the Skyway Park site, that the other half would be a park. That is 2012 or 2011. Almost 10 years later, that's finally going to happen. Before we move on this slide, you will notice the river in the background going all the way into Newark Bay, the Skyway running through it, and Sip Creek, which again looks kind of cool in the foreground to the left, to the right, I mean. And the two little trails on both sides still exist. I'll say more about that in a minute. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, this is just an EPA award calling from 2018, referring to excellence in site reuse. The problem is it was premature because here it is 2021 and the site is still not quite ready. But the good news, and go to the next slide, is the city, the mayor and the city have agreed to open the park, starting with a COVID memorial, which is a really nice idea, a tribute to the 500 or so people who died during the height of the pandemic and were unable to have funerals. So there will be 500 plus trees planted, one for each one. There will be a memorial plaque and other amenities to go along with it. And we've been meeting with the mayor and his team to discuss the details of it. One thing we were concerned about, and we're still a little concerned about, although after 3 or 4 substantial meetings with the mayor, they've taken a lot of our suggestions seriously and amended their plan. We didn't want the memorial, even though we like the idea, we love the idea of trees. We didn't want the memorial to take over the park. We wanted it to be Skyway Park with a COVID memorial in it. And that looks like it's going to be the case. Go to the next slide. This is the warehouse with the park. You can notice that it's got the Pulaski running through it. You can also notice Sip Creek, the gray area in the middle. It tends to split the park into 4 sections, 4 quadrants. That'll be helpful as I talk about the plan. Next, please. So this is the mayor's plan. I just want you to see it for a second. And then I want to, before we go into the details, I want to look at the next slide. This is what it looks like, a wonderful drone shot from the air of the 2 western quadrants. And you can notice what we call the northwest quadrant, the big open green space, is just an absolutely beautiful spot on the park site. And that's the section we want to keep as open as possible. So if you go to the next slide, which is again the plan the mayor's team came up with, gives you a little bit of an idea of it. Notice the shape again, 4 sections with the creek running through the middle. The grove in the upper right, which is the main memorial area near the entrance, the pedestrian entrance at 1 and 9. That's kind of cool, and we like that. We love the idea of the pedestrian bridge, which allows you to walk and bicycle across the creek. More about that in a second. There's parking in the southern section, southeastern quadrant. And it's that northwestern quadrant that we are mostly concerned about. We did convince the mayor's team to leave as much open space as possible, what they call the lawn, you can see there. We love the idea of the butterfly garden, although we'd like it to be a little bit more of a natural habitat for birds as well. We're comfortable with trees being there, but we prefer to have somewhat fewer trees than the 118 currently designated. And we'd like to see some of those trees moved to the, let's see if I can get this right, the southwest section, maybe bordering what's now the walkway. See where it says connection to the Hackensack River Walkway? We thought that would be great if both sides of that were lined with trees as well. Notice there's a vehicular entrance. You can, now the only way to get in to Skyway Park is across from Wonder Bagel, but you can get in there down the end of Broadway. And although it means going through an industrial parking lot, the city is negotiating apparently with property owners to allow for vehicular access. We'd prefer not to see cars coming up onto that section. And we certainly don't want parking up there, which was in the original plan. It isn't clear whether it's still here. We would like that area to be as open as possible. At the same time, we understand that people need to get there. And so we're going to negotiate with the city and hopefully get them to make whatever paved areas smaller than now exist. One or two other things I want to note. Future pedestrian bridge. The original thought we had was a pedestrian bridge at the mouth of the river, at the creek, where the creek hits the Hackensack River, but that's extremely expensive. So we thought this pedestrian bridge more inland was a nice compromise, and we complimented the city on coming up with that idea. What it now does is, as soon as it's built, separate from the larger pedestrian bridge on the riverfront, it allows you to walk or bicycle along the Hackensack River walkway, cross that pedestrian bridge into the main lawn and the open area. The one concern we have with this plan, I shouldn't say the one concern, one major concern, as I mentioned, is this northwest quadrant. We want to see it as open as possible with as little asphalt and as much greenery as can happen. So if you look at the pictures at the bottom, the little circular inserts at the various spots, we're okay with that paving accessibility on the eastern section, but we want to minimize it on the western section. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is our list of priorities, and we're going to share this with the mayor's team when we meet, hopefully later this month. We love the idea of the COVID memorial. We love the idea of opening Skyway Park, but we'd like to see it more green and open, more nature, less asphalt, fewer cars, no parking, preferably on the northwest quadrant, more a variety of the trees. The initial design had the trees looking very regimented and very uniform, and we thought more variety was more appropriate. Someone I spoke to at the Environmental Commission made a comment about how the diversity of trees would reflect the diversity of Jersey City. I like that concept. We want to line the trails in the southwest quadrant, as I mentioned, with trees. We want to make sure there's bicycle access. We're not sure whether it should be gravel or paved. That's something we need to look into. The wildlife habitat, butterfly garden, native plants. We certainly want people to have access to the shore for fishing and birding. And we want historical markers in particular to reflect the rich history of the site, from the indigenous people to the industrial aspects of the park. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is the walkway at and it connects. I've already done it. A group of us went on a bicycle ride a few weeks ago, right before the holidays, where you can ride on this paved trail across a gravel trail and a little bit of grass into Skyway Park. So let's just go to these next 3 or 4 slides quickly. Go ahead and next one, please. That's also the walkway behind Prologis, very easily connected to Skyway Park. Next. This is the walkway down at Society Hill, which already exists, and sadly some of the trees have been removed, but the walkway's there and it has been improved. So next, please. Also the walkway behind Society Hill. So if we can connect that walkway with the Skyway Park, Lincoln Park West walkway. Next slide, please. And very exciting artist rendering of the walkway that will be built behind the Bayfront development, which is still in its early stages. I pointed this out last time I came to your meeting. I love the windmills in the background. Next, please. Another view of the walkway behind Bayfront. Next, please. So if you look at the map, again, as much as right now Skyway Park itself is our priority, the possibility of linking Skyway Park to Lincoln Park West and further south down through Society Hill and creating a Hackensack River walkway is something that's very exciting to all of us, and I hope you'll agree and help us push city and county and other stakeholders to make this happen. Someday it could go all the way up to Laurel Hill Park in Secaucus and down to Bayonne, where there's already much Hackensack River walkway built. That's something off in the future. Okay, next slide, please. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the Crossroads campaign to connect all these various trails and walkways, the Essex Hudson Greenway, the Bergen Arches, all these create incredible opportunities for Jersey City. Again, not worth taking our time now, but I look forward to talking with you, working with you in the future to make all this happen. Next, please. This is just a nice picture to end the slideshow. And then I think our final slide is the next one. Yeah. For more information, if you want to get in touch, you can reach me directly, Steve Krinsky at comcast.net, or through the Skyway Park Gmail account. We'd love to hear from you, any input, thoughts, etc. This is an exciting project, and we feel like we've made a big step forward, and now we need to work out the details, which is challenging, but something we can do with your help. So that said, let's take some questions. Kevin, how do you want to do this?
I'll find the questions in the chat. Me and Anu can look at them and we'll read them off for you. Again, anybody who's watching this, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, just leave your question for Steve in the chat and we'll make sure to ask it. First one's actually from Deb Italiano. Is it okay if we share this slideshow on our Facebook page?
Yep, absolutely.
Great. So we're going to try and make the speakers' materials available, both Deb and Steve's slideshows.
This was a little bit tailored to this particular meeting, and I'm going to, over the next few weeks, tweak it a bit and put it on our website, which we built a year ago, but it's pretty empty. So over the next few weeks, we expect to update it. But yeah, this is fine. Go ahead and use it.
Excellent. All right, I have a question from Bill Armbruster, our secretary. It's a pretty big one. When do you expect the park to be open and all the features you're advocating for to be implemented?
Hi, Bill. Well, there's two answers to that. Actually, two answers and a big question mark. The mayor hopes to open the COVID memorial this spring. Now, that's pretty ambitious considering they have to truck in a lot of fill because of the cap that was put on the site. They can't plant trees that go deep into the soil, so they need landfill. So they're going to have to truck in fairly large amount of landfill. But he said he hopes by next year, maybe spring, summer to begin, and in the summer, fall to open the COVID memorial part of the park, which means the park is pretty much open. As far as the other things go, we think we're talking about a number of years for the entire park to be developed. But my understanding is that once the COVID memorial is built, the main entrance to the park will be there. The walkway will have been built. There will be almost immediate, once the bridges across the creek is built, there will be almost immediate connectivity, somewhat primitive, which in my mind is fine, to make the park at least available and open. As far as all the other features, again, I think that's more long-term.
Anu, do you have a question from the chat?
Yeah, there was a question about, in the last presentation, you mentioned something about access to Bergen County Town via ferrying. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can't, only in the sense that as we're meeting with people over the past couple of years and talking about all the ideas, people have suggested ferry options. I haven't heard any mention of it in a good while. I know there's talk of possible ferry, again, talk between Kearney Point and Jersey City over near the Bayfront area, but nothing more than that. So I would be skeptical. I think the most interesting example of connectivity is the Essex Hudson Greenway, which is less than half a mile from Skyway Park, although it's one of those you can't get there from here. It's just not easily accessible. But I'm skeptical about ferrying, but I'd say that partly out of ignorance. I don't really know.
I do have one thing to add. I know that the county has been conducting a ferry study, and I'm actually going to drop the link to that. They're doing their survey. They have a public workshop coming up. So if you want to learn more about the study, I just dropped the link. You should be seeing it on Facebook. Still early days if they're only doing a study now, but it's definitely something that's being considered.
I'm sorry I laughed, but I just saw Rick's Jimmy Hoffa post.
Oh yeah, do you want to answer that question?
Well, there's no answer. Jimmy Hoff is not buried in the PJP landfill. He's buried under Giant Stadium. I don't know.
Well, it's settled then. Um,
But I will say, just from a historical point of view, the 30,000 barrels of toxic waste that were retrieved from the PJP landfill were presumably dumped by, I don't know what to call them. I guess to just be blunt and say the mafia who controlled the carting services in those days. I hope I'm not going to get myself in trouble by saying that, but I think it's pretty obvious. Anyway, go ahead.
I have a question from Chris Lamb. Is the site accessible now?
Yes. Oh, good question, Chris. So I asked the mayor, when are you going to open it so we can go see it? And he just looked at me, kind of laughed, and he said, it's open. He said the fence is down, or it's at least ajar. And sure enough, like 2 days later, a whole bunch of us went there and bicycled across. It's a long walk from the entrance at Wonder Bagel at SIP across and then under the Pulaski and then up a hill. And even with a bicycle, it's a challenge, but it can be done. When we had the press conference where the mayor announced this, people were allowed to drive down the end of Broadway and come in that back way. Eventually, that will be an access point. But right now, you can go there. I will say, and I've spoken to Kevin about this, weather permitting and schedule permitting, I'm going to organize some visits there, particularly some bicycle trips over the next month or two, certainly when the spring comes. And aside from COVID safety precautions, it is open and available. And I'll let Kevin know, and he can share it with anyone who wants to join us.
All right. Sounds great. With that, I think I'm going to wrap up this section of the meeting. I don't think we have any more questions. But Steve, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really exciting project.
Happy to do it. I'd love to hear from some of you by email or via Kevin. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So that kind of wraps up that section of the meeting. Anu, would you like to tell the members about the survey?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great.
Yeah. So we have every year or last couple of years, I believe, we've had a member survey that allows us to gather information about how are the members liking what we're doing, issues that we could talk about more, how we run our meetings, all those types of things. And so we've created a survey for this year, and would love for our members to participate and to get feedback. We're always looking for ways to improve what we're doing and add new features and things to what we do. And so, please if you get a chance to take that survey, it'd be really great. It is only for members. So another great reason to become a member. As a member, your feedback, we take feedback from everybody, of course, but as a member, we really listen to our members and to understand what their needs and questions are. And so, we would love everybody to fill that out. The link, I think, Kevin, you just put the link in the comment section, so you could go there and fill it out. And please do that. It'll really help us. And we're going to present the results in our February meeting, which is a members only meeting. And actually, I don't think we talked about a deadline for this. The deadline for the survey.
No, we haven't. But we'll send it out in an email update after the meeting. But for now, it's open. So anybody who wants to fill it out now can fill it out now.
Sorry, there's a comment about org membership. Yeah, we could, if you go to just JSQCA.com, you could go, and then right in the middle, there's the membership button. You could go there and fill it out. And then it should be, Kevin, do you mind maybe just typing it in the comment section?
Sure. And it's also displayed on the screen right now.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll share the link, yeah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Awesome. Okay. And so, that brings me into, I want to start talking about the February meeting. And so February meeting is going to be a members only meeting. We're going to be presenting the results of the survey and doing other things that are tailored just to our members. Membership has certain benefits, and one of them is being able to fill out the member survey, come to the members only meeting, submit feedback. I'm trying to think about the format, and at our next board meeting, I'll discuss it with them about how we're going to facilitate, because we do want questions, concerns. This organization only works if our members are a part of it and we're able to amplify your voices. So fill out the survey, email us, hello@jsqca.com. If you have anything you'd like to discuss during the member survey, meta questions, how can we run our meetings? What type of speakers would you like to hear from? What are some blind spots that myself and the chairs and the board members might be missing, ways we can improve? Like Anu said, we're always interested in feedback, both from the wider community, but especially from our members. So the other thing that's really important for our February meeting is we're going to have board elections. We're going to have 3 board seats that we need to fill. I believe some of the candidates will be running again, but it's open to, per the bylaws, for people to run. So if you are interested in becoming a candidate and interested in being on the ballot for our February meeting, email hello@jsqca.com. Please put board election in your subject line so we know that you're interested in. Or if you just have questions, if you've never served on a board before, or have questions about how JSQCA does things, please let me know. I'd be glad to help people. We always love bringing in new faces and having people get more involved. So please, hello@jsqca.com is the best way to get in touch there.
Yeah, and I just want to add something to that. I've joined, I think it was maybe 1.5 years or 2 years now that I've been part of the association, and it's a really wonderful group of people, and I love being a part of it. And I think for anybody looking to get more involved and just be around really great people, I think it's a really great organization to get more involved in. I really highly suggest if you're interested to please reach out and find out how to get involved.
Thank you, Anu. Yeah, no, and it's really funny. I got involved almost by accident. I was at I think I already told this story at the other meeting, but I was at a master plan meeting 4 years ago with Bill Armbruster and Arena Zaki and Renee, and we were in a little small group discussing about ways we want to improve our neighborhood, and we're concerned about this, we're concerned about that. And they said, well, why don't you join us? Come to our community association. It's brand new. You could be a part of it. And it's been really rewarding, really exciting. So yeah, anytime we can get new people involved is a good thing for me. With that, I'm going to move on to committee reports. Clean Green JC, which is a separate organization, they're doing a cleanup on Wallace and Broadway. I think if Renee has the flyer, I believe Renee sent the flyer out to the Clean Committee already. It's concurrent with this meeting, so it's running from 10 to 1 p.m. today. But, when the meeting's over in a few minutes, feel free, join in. Wallace and Broadway is where that's occurring. The Green Committee has a meeting come up on Wednesday, January 20th at 7 p.m. They're going to be reviewing a report from our former board member, Vincent Marchetto, about the proposed Bergen Arches Park. If you're not on the mailing list, you can email Bill Armbruster at comcast.net. But yeah, it's a proposal he's put together. They're going to be reviewing it at the next meeting. And with that, James, if you're there, if you want to turn your camera on, I have James from the History Committee who has some updates on Bergen Square Day.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Anu. Hello, one and all, and Happy New Year. Yeah, we're excited. Bergen Square Day this year will be October 23rd, 2021, and this year we will merge it with the Bergen Apple Fest, which was our fall history event the past, skipping 2020, 2 years prior. So it'll be one great event, and I'm sure that we will all be more than ready to step out and join our community in celebrating the cultural heritage of Bergen Square, which is, of course, the historic heart of Journal Square, indeed Jersey City, indeed perhaps New Jersey. So yeah, October 23rd is Bergen Square Day. Please go to our website. Maybe Kevin, you can splash this on the TV, but it's bergensquareday.com. Go to the website, and if you want to participate in any way, if you want to be a vendor, or if you're part of a community group or association that wants to table, or if you would like to sponsor, there are tabs, buttons for you to click on the website where you can do that. So participants, sponsors, we certainly need to raise money. The more money we have, the better the event can be. So all sponsors are listed on the website. Additionally, if you just want to stay in the loop with Bergen Square Day, all things Bergen Square Day, there's another way that you can just get on the mailing list when you go to the website. This year, we will be dependent upon digital spaces for all of our publicity for at least the first part of the year. So therefore, we ask all members to share the website through your own social media accounts. Also go to Bergen Square Day social media. That would be hashtag Bergen Square Day, one word, lowercase. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Please go to those locations and like and follow and share. Again, we need to get the word out. So everyone is there and everyone is participating. For those who would like to volunteer, we'll need a whole team of people for Bergen Square Day on October 23rd. Please write to history@jsqca.com with BSD volunteer in the subject line, and we'll start creating that list, that important list. All right, and then one more quick history announcement. We will be starting a series of virtual Journal Square history forums. These will be monthly events. The first one is scheduled for February 9th and is entitled Trails, Tracks, and Traffic, a transportation history of Journal Square. That will be February 9th at 7 p.m. Stay tuned for details on how to tune in and participate in that good event. So thank you one and all, and I will see you on October 23rd, but hopefully before then. Okay, thanks, Ken.
Thank you, James. Okay, and I believe that's going to wrap us up for today. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have any other comments. If you're interested in becoming a member, again, JSQCA.com. Send us an email, hello@JSQCA.com if you have any questions. I'm going to put the PowerPoints from our speakers today up on the Facebook. And with that, have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.